Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you. Wow. Look at that. Wow. Look at that. Thank you. What a great room. What a great reception. Can you all hear me if I don't have the mic? Yes. I heard enough no's. I'm going to keep using the mic unless the feedback gets to us. But thank you so much, Mayor, for that kind introduction. And I hope you all know how lucky you are to have Mayor Steve Benjamin serving you. Not only America's best dressed mayor, but one of America's most respected. And that is why we were so proud to vote him in as our president. It's the only one of us actually became a president so far. President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, providing a voice. You know, he presides over the one place in America where you can get a bunch of high-profile elected officials from around the country from both parties who actually like each other and get stuff done. That used to be called the United States Congress, but now it's the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So thank you for your leadership. And I guess that goes to the first part of why we're doing what we're doing. So I get that it is not traditional for a millennial Midwestern mayor of a community about the size of Columbia to be talking about the future of the free world. I get that it would be more expected for me to have marinated in Washington for a few decades, have a few more silver hairs up here, although I get a new one every time I surf cable news, so they'll come in. And yet, this is a moment that I think calls for something completely different. And part of that is local leadership. Making sure that we get it to where Washington starts looking more like our best run cities and towns before it goes the other way around. I also think it is time for some of the most prominent and visible voices in our Democratic Party to come from the red states. We cannot continue to be regarded as a party that is only for the deepest blue communities. There is written nowhere that a state like South Carolina or Indiana or anywhere else has to be conservative forever. I come from Indiana, the state that produced our current vice president. Please do not judge us by the former governor of Indiana. I mention this because I feel like I can relate to how you might feel about a certain senator from this state, who I believe will be retiring shortly. The real reason I think it's important for somebody to step forward from a community like mine, communities like ours, is there are so many Americans who came from a place like South Bend in the industrial Midwest, but there are rural communities with the exact same story, where you grow up as a young person believing that success for you has to do with getting out, that you don't have a future in your own hometown. I thought that, and I left. And the moment I left, I began to realize that I was from somewhere, that it mattered to me to be from somewhere in particular. And that is so important right now because we have a president who is selling the message that the only way to get to our hearts is resentment. That the only way to make us better off is to stop, change, and try to turn back the clock and make America great again. Two problems with that. First of all, some of those days that they're trying to return us to were never quite as great as they were advertised. But most importantly, American greatness, and I believe in American greatness, consists in looking to the future, not the past. They're telling us to look for greatness in all the wrong places. And I will argue that there can never be an honest politics that revolves completely around the word again. future's going to look different from the past, and that's all right. And that brings me to why I think it's also time for the millennial generation to start producing leaders at the highest level of our national politics. We certainly have an awful lot at stake. I mean, I was in high school when Columbine happened. We're the generation that grew up as the school shooting generation. We're a generation that's going to be on the business end of climate change for as long as we live, whether it's floods in the Midwest or hurricanes on the eastern seaboard. We could be the first generation in American history to make less than our parents unless we change the way this economy is going. And that's not because we don't work hard, because this is also the generation that produced the bulk of the troops after 9/11. So why wouldn't this generation be putting forward leaders in a presidential contest in 2020? Now, when you are a millennial Midwestern mayor, I think you just come at things a little differently. Our values are the right values. They always have been. Our commitment to economic fairness, our commitment to racial and social justice. Those make us who we are, and we should not budge from those values 1 inch. We do, though, have an opportunity to update our vocabulary around those values that we hold dear. And it's why I don't ever want to hear again somebody saying that our party can't put what we believe in on a bumper sticker. You hear it all the time, right? We're policy people. We do the 14-point plan, and we put together the binder. We don't know how to talk in terms of bumper sticker. So I'm going to give you my bumper sticker. Freedom, democracy, security. Now, those big words, they're words that describe something that nobody could really be against, except I will argue that when you actually take freedom, democracy, and security seriously, they point you in a decidedly progressive direction. Don't let our conservative friends monopolize the idea of freedom. They care about freedom, but they got a very narrow version of freedom. To them, it's freedom from. Usually freedom from government. As if government were the only thing that can make you unfree. That's just not true. Your neighbor can make you unfree. Your cable company can make you unfree. If they get into the business of telling you who to marry, your county clerk can make you unfree. So let's talk about what freedom really means. Freedom means being able to start a small business because you know that when you leave your old job, that doesn't mean you're going to have to lose your health care. Health care is freedom. Freedom means that your reproductive health is up to you and not to a male government official or politician. Freedom means that when you have paid your debt to society as an ex-offender, you get to re-enter society and become a productive, tax-paying, voting citizen just like the rest of us. And it means you can organize for a fair day's work, fair day's pay, fair day's conditions for a fair day's work. That's freedom. So don't let anybody tell you that the other side is the party of freedom. And let's talk about democracy for a minute. Our party is called the Democratic Party for a reason. And we had better not forget it, because democracy is on the ballot in 2020. The whole point of this country is that democracy shall not perish from the earth. So let's attend to our democracy and recognize that it is not okay to stop U.S. citizens from voting because one party has decided they would be better off if fewer people voted. Or to tolerate districts being drawn so that politicians get to choose their voters instead of the other way around. Or to say it's just plain okay for this to be a country that calls itself a democracy, but we don't necessarily let the person who gets the most votes actually win office when it comes to our president. Let's change it. Our Constitution is an elegant thing, and its most elegant feature is its capacity for renewal. The amendment process is there for a reason. Let's not be afraid to use it if that makes our country stronger, better, and more democratic. Freedom, democracy, security. And there's a lot more to security than what some of our friends on the other side of the aisle think about. I get the traditional views of security, and they're important. The kind of security I was looking after, the only time I really got to spend quality time in the area of Columbia, which is when I was Lieutenant Pete. My name wasn't even spelled right on my name tape. When I was up at Camp McCready going through combat training, where they teach Navy people who get Army jobs how to go do Army stuff. That training served me well, but I also learned a few things in that training, and then in the deployment that came after, when I was in Afghanistan. One of the things I learned was that what kept me safe wasn't just my body armor or my weapons or my training. It was the fact that the flag on my arm represented a country known to keep its word. And our allies knew it, and our enemies knew it, and that kept us safe. But there's more to security than the military, just like there's more to the security than putting up a wall from sea to shining sea. You can't put up a wall against cybersecurity threats that are clear and present and impacting this country today. And they can't keep us safe from climate security threats if they're not willing to acknowledge that it's a problem. Nor can they keep us safe from white nationalism. Claiming lies. White nationalism is a deadly threat that has claimed lives as far away as New Zealand and as close to home as Charleston. So let's do something about that. Now, it's pretty warm in here, so I'm not going to go on too much longer, except I want to make sure you understand my why. Why I think it's worth doing this. Why I think politics matters to begin with. Because as much as I love talking about our highest values, I also think we need to make sure that everything we have to say, every policy we favor, every politician we believe in, is explained and defended and justified based on what is closest to the earth, our everyday lived experience. I think this is really important. Because we get caught up in what's on cable and who looked good in the committee hearing and the show. It's hard to look away from a horror show. And so we're getting so absorbed in what's happening in Washington. But the reason anything that happens in Washington matters is what it does for our everyday lives. That's the other lesson I learned when I put a letter in an envelope and wrote "just in case" on the outside of it and put it where my family could find it when I was packing my bags to come down to Fort Jackson and on off to Afghanistan. That's what's at stake when we decide who our president's going to be. And I'll tell you about another moment in my life that brought home to me how much it matters who the people are who are making decisions with power over us. And it was one of the worst moments of my life, and it happened a few months ago. It was a moment when I found myself driving in a vehicle from the hospital downtown, where my mother was, to another place across town where my father was getting chemotherapy. And the reason I had to go find him in a hurry was to let him know that instead of a stent, Mom was going to need triple bypass. She's fine, by the way, so just so you know. But you can understand this is not the sort of thing you put in a text message. So I had to go find him. And with all the things racing in my mind, I had certain things going for me in that moment and in the months that followed. Because Dad, unfortunately, didn't make it. And our family faced some of the toughest decisions of my life. I make decisions for a living, and nothing could have prepared me for those decisions. But I had a few things going for me. Two in particular I want to tell you about because they wouldn't be there if it weren't for political choices that were made. The first was Medicare. So as tough as those decisions that we had to make were, the only thing we had to think about was what was right for our family, what was right medically, what was right for us. We didn't have to think about whether we would be bankrupted by a medical condition. Because some people in positions of power decided that making sure that when you hit a certain age your health care was taken care of was the right thing to do. And now I believe the time has come for us to decide that that ought to apply to every single American. And the other thing I had going for me was my marriage. My marriage to... My marriage to an amazing person who held our family together, who lifted it up. He can't be here with us today, but I'm so excited for you to meet him because I think you're going to like him just about as much as I did. An amazing human being who, while I was getting in the car to go make that drive, was at the hospital with our priest and with my mother because he could get into the hospital because he is a member of our family. A fact that exists as a matter of law by the grace of a single vote on the U.S. Supreme Court. So that's why this matters. And if you're encountering somebody in your activism, because I know I'm preaching to people who already care about this process, but you're going to encounter people who don't think their vote matters. And on some level I get it, because the system has become so twisted that people who care about the world wonder whether their participation matters. But that's why it does. Because our everyday lives go differently, because in our most vulnerable moments, we will be protected by the government, of and for and by the people, if and only if we make sure it's actually working for us. That's why we're doing this. That's why I'm doing this. And that's why I'm so glad to be a member. So here I am with this name nobody can pronounce, somebody that I'm pretty sure a month ago nobody knew at all who I was. Now I'm starting to think some people know who I am. Yeah. And I'm asking for your help. Okay. You're in a state that has a lot of influence on how this process works. And you're in a position to help carry this message, to help enlist supporters, to let people know why you care about where we're headed. And I need that help. And I know that it can be discouraging at times, it can be lonely at times. The more involved you are, the more you'll have those moments where you're wondering if we're getting anywhere. I would say the whole last 2 years has been one of those moments. But that's why we're here. Because being involved in the process, volunteering for somebody, voting for somebody, running for office is, at the end of the day, an act of hope. So I'm hopeful we're going to get somewhere with this thing. Can I count on your help? I don't think I ought to add anything to that. Thank you. I will see you again. And I can't wait till we have something to celebrate together. Thank you.